Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video we will be using a new Trick Room team to continue our VGC journey. Let's get into it. The main idea of this team is to set up Trick Room with either Cresselia or Reuniclus, and then do some good damage with the other mons. My opponent starts by U-turning into the Incineroar and boosting with the Sword Stance on the Ogerpon. I keep things nice and simple and one-shot the Ogerpon with the Head Smash. And after all that, I'm able to set up my Trick Room. He then goes into the Urshifu Rapid Strike. Now expecting the Surging Strikes, I go into my Hydrapple, lower everyone's evasion. His Incineroar then goes for the Fake Out and does barely any damage. I fire off the Dazzling Gleam, do some good damage. He then fires off the Surging Strike, which Hydrapple eats up all 3 shots with no problem. Expecting the Grass move, he switches his Urshifu out into the Rillaboom, gets the Grassy Surge going, as my Giga Drain does absolutely nothing. Incineroar then goes for the Parting Shot, lowering my Hydrapple's stats, and uses it to pivot back into the Urshifu. Meanwhile, Cresselia continues to fire off those Dazzling Gleams, getting that good damage. I easily could have switched into my Magnezone here, but he couldn't do too much to Cresselia, and I was getting some good chip damage. He goes back into the Incineroar, intimidating both of my mons, and then goes for a Fake Out on my Hydrapple, as Cresselia continues to fire up those Dazzling Gleams. I should have expected the upcoming Fake Out and switch into my Magnezone, but I decided to stay and take a little bit of damage with the Hydrapple. Cresselia shoots off another Dazzling Gleam, as the Rillaboom then goes for the Wood Hammer, does some huge damage to my Cresselia. Thankfully, Rillaboom takes a lot of recoil damage. I then finally decide to switch, go into my Emboar. He goes for another Wood Hammer, Emboar just hangs on. Incineroar is then able to connect with the knockoff, get rid of my Life Orb. Hydrapple's finally able to move, goes for the Draco Meteor, takes out the Rillaboom. After all this, we have a nice lead on our opponent, up 4-2. He then goes back into the injured Urshifu. Trying to preserve my Emboar, I go into my Magnezone finally as he goes for the Surging Strikes, knocking Magnezone down to about half health. Incineroar then goes for another knockoff, which Hydrapple takes no problem, goes for the Giga Drain, finally takes out the Urshifu. We all get a little bit of health back as the grass goes away. My opponent then forfeits. Good game. Alrighty, let's get into game number 2. My opponent starts off with the Cyclozar Cresselia lead, as I start with the Emboar Reuniclus. On the first turn, he's able to outspeed, goes right for the attack, but Reuniclus tanks that. Cresselia goes for the Psychic and does some good damage with the Emboar. I retire with the Flare Blitz, get him down to his Citrus Berry range, and then allow Reuniclus to set up the Trick Room. Now we're ready to do some damage. He switches the Cresselia into the Cinccino. I go for the Shadow Ball, do absolutely nothing. Go for the Flare Blitz, take out the Cinccino. After all that recoil, Emboar barely hangs on, but then gets cleaned up by the Dragon Claw. After we both lose a Pokemon, I then go into my Magnezone, as he goes into the Cresselia. He immediately goes for the Terra Steel and the Cresselia, as I go for the Shadow Ball, which he tanks with no problem. I fire off the Flash Cannon, he eats it up, no issue. He goes for the Skill Swap, steals my Regenerator, and he goes for the Shed Tail with the Cyclozar, uses it to pivot into the Several Edge. On the next turn, I predict him to go after my Reuniclus, so I go for the Protect, fire off the Discharge, do barely any damage and break the sub. Thankfully get the Lucky Para. He goes for the Psychic on my Magnezone, does barely any damage but gets that Hacks right back, fires off the Poltegeist but I'm able to protect it. With Trick Room still up, I'm able to outspeed, go for the Shadow Ball, but Several Edge is able to eat that up, goes for the Psychic, Reuniclus tanks that no issue, I fire off another Discharge, do some good damage, he goes for the Poltegeist, finally cleans up the Reuniclus. With Reuniclus gone, I'm now unable to set up the Trick Room as I then go into my Hydrapple, lower everyone's evasion. It's now time for the Apple and the Magnet to clean up this game. I go for the Protect as he goes for the Poltergeist, does absolutely nothing to me. I then fire off a Discharge with the Magnezone, able to clean up the Several Edge and the Cresselia. He then goes into his last Pokemon, the Cyclozar. He's able to outspeed, goes for the Ice Spinner, Hydrapple's able to tank that. Magnezone then fires off the Flash Cannon, get him down to his berry. Hydrapple then cleans him up with the Draco Meteor. Good game. Definitely enjoyed using some of the unique mons in the Trick Room, but that's the video. Please let me know what you guys think down below and stay tuned for future content. Peace.